Hello and welcome back to the SimTech Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the world of tech, tools and the talent behind clinical simulation. I'm your host Craig, and today, well, this one's a bit off the cuff. We've decided to hit record and have a spontaneous chat all about VR360. No script, no agenda, just a bunch of clinicians, the mic and a whole lot of thoughts on how immersive 360 video is shaking up how we train, teach and experience health education. From simulating real-life scenarios to capturing the raw perspective of patients, including some of the work we've done recently, VR360 has become a game changer. So grab a coffee, settle in, and join me as we explore the virtual frontier of clinical simulation.
This impromptu podcast is going to talk about virtual reality sim, and it's going to talk about how we can teach non-technical skills through virtual reality. So I don't know, does everybody want to introduce themselves? I'll start on my back over to you.
Over to me. It's like Wimbledon, isn't it? So I'm Anne. I am a clinical educator for the foundation programme, and I've done some undergraduate teaching as well.
And Natalie?
Hi, I'm Natalie. I've been here for about 2 months in the NHS, and I'm a medical education assistant who comes from a HR background.
And Ed.
Hello, good afternoon. Right, my name is Jack Randles. I'm the clinical lead in simulation at CDFT, and my day job is a consultant anaesthetist at UHND.
Fab. And I am Alistair. I am a clinical teaching fellow and have been for a couple of years, and I am going to be a trainee in ophthalmology as of the start of August. So let's start by having a think about what is virtual reality, what is 360 virtual reality simulation. I don't know if any of my lovely guests want to jump in and give their initial thoughts.
Well, all I can say is I asked, well, what does VR stand for? So that's how much I'm not a technical bod at all. But yeah, virtual reality. It brings a song to mind, doesn't it? Virtual reality. That's my contribution.
That's absolutely fine. Any advances on that?
Well, Alistair, seeing as, we're getting down to nitty-gritty, I mean, with virtual reality, what you're doing, in this case, what we've done in our experience at Sim Centre is created video footage, but the footage is 360. So if you've been down to Curry's and bought one of those headsets that cost a couple £100, you stick it on and you look around and you're on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
So you're up and down on this roller coaster, and by the end of it, even though you haven't moved from your seat, you still feel sick. Having not had to pay a tenner for the privilege, it's brilliant. So it's kind of like that. You're creating this experience just with this headset, moving out of where you are into a virtual space, if you like. And the thing about creating that experience that's all around you with the sounds and the sights and your senses being immersed is you can create an awful lot of experience, an awful lot of bang for your buck, if you like, right there. I think we'll get on to talking about that from the educational ramification point of view.
Yeah, that sounds great. So it sounds like virtual reality sim gives you the context of your working environment without actually being in your working environment. So you've got the sights, the sounds, the smells, and you can perhaps not the smells, and you can experience everything that you would go through in a scenario without actually being there, and that is possibly a way to frame the certain types of teaching.
And I guess the benefit of that then is you get to control the environment. The thing about healthcare and learning in healthcare is it's complex, isn't it? It's fast moving, it's dynamic. Stuff happens, positive or negative experience. But 99.9% of the time, no one goes back and goes, well, how could we improve and learn from that experience? How could we do this different? How could we do that? Because we've moved on to the next job.
But do you said there, Derek, that you get the chance to control the environment, but if I'm not mistaken, the video is already completed. So that bit then isn't fixed, is it? You if you're doing a VR reality, you've got
Yeah.
your learning objectives, you video it,
Yes.
and that bit you can't control because you're filming it as it happens. To me, the bit that helps it to be a powerful learning tool is the ability to stop
Yes.
and think, okay, guys, people in the room, what did you see? And everybody watching it comes at it from a slightly different perspective. Somebody may have looked behind them on the VR. Somebody may be looking over way down, and that's the ability to see it. So I would say it depends on where your standpoint is.
But what you've done is you've scripted it. You have created a learning experience. So when you create that VR360, whatever, let's take something, most healthcare staff will experience, an acute severe asthma, whether you're on the ward or you're in A&E or wherever. You've scripted that for that asthma to present in a certain way, for the healthcare staff around to behave in a certain way, to do certain things. And as you're saying, Anne, if you then pause at specific points and you stop and you pause and everyone takes their headsets and their earphones off and say, what do you think about that? What was happening there? What do you want these people to do next to manage this person? How were how were the staff dealing with the patient's mum at that point? Because you've got a tightly controlled 360 video experience, if you like, and everyone has basically experienced the same healthcare scenario. When you pause it, all your people coming with their different experiences to date create a rich conversation about the behaviors, about the interactions, about the management, about what's going on. And that's what creates the very rich conversation. So you've got a very...
the learning, I suppose.
Yeah, you've got a very enhanced experiential educational tool in actually a short period of time. And the beauty is you can repeat that over and over again. Normal simulation, you're not always sure about what people are going to do in the room, so to speak. Here, a super controlled environment, because you've scripted and recorded the experience that is now standardized. So you've got a guaranteed education.
So that bit would be a fixed vision, if you like. It's how it's then picked apart and interpreted that's the learning from it.
And your debriefer can therefore, the way they facilitate the learning conversation ensures that learners come together in a very constructive, creative way that explores deeper stuff than just, oh, well, it's asthma, let's give some salbutamol. They can go so much deeper than that. And also what enhances that is the very safe environment. They've watched someone else performing. It's not about them.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So you can really go provocative with the material that other education modalities struggle to cover.
And I think there's a few points in there, isn't there? Not only is it reproducible so that you could watch the same material again and again, not only is it equitable so everyone in the room can experience the same thing, but much as a trainee learning to do a procedure can watch that procedure without being able to do it in the way that they would need to be able to do in sim. But it can put members of staff in one another's shoes. Yeah. So a doctor can see something from the point of view of a member of nursing staff. A member of nursing staff can see from the point of view of another allied healthcare professional or a doctor or so on.
And why is that particularly powerful? When we're talking about the non-technical skills of being able to see it from other people's perspective.
I think it's worth mentioning that obviously we're talking about how repeatable it is and things like that. You've got to think in a human environment, a lot of learning happens through conversations that happen after the fact. People who talk and give anecdotal evidence in stories of what's happened to them at work, but not everybody talks. And how often are they going to talk? If you think these scenarios are built around anecdotal evidence, stories, things that have actually happened, in framing it for an educational piece of work that can be played infinite amount of times to an infinite amount of people. And that's a really powerful educational tool.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. The other thing I wondered if you were going to talk about that, so when we're talking about perspectives with that, is, yeah, doctors can see things from the nurse's perspective. Remember, when we've got the 360 camera in the middle of the room, I guess you can put the camera in a situation that almost takes a perspective. Where you can also put that camera is from the patient perspective. You can stick it where the patient would be and see how patients, imagine then something that's very challenging is that healthcare has found challenging historically is managing patients with learning disabilities very well. If you're then doing training material on patients' learning disabilities, imagine putting that camera in a place of a patient with learning disabilities, so you can see their feet, you can see their hands, all this kind of stuff. But then filming it so you've got parts, and in the first part it's like, with the way staff are speaking to the patient, or is the table nearby if they've got disability or whatever, and then pausing it and saying, well, what did you think about what was happening there?
Yeah,
what do you think the patient's perspective was? How would you have done this? These are powerful questions, and when your participants get in a group and they wrestle with these ideas, it's super evocative education.
Yeah, I think that's a really valuable point, and I think we're touching there on non-technical skills, aren't we? So I think maybe we should think about defining non-technical skills. I don't know if anybody wants to offer what their thoughts are about non-technical skills, so our audience can understand better what we're talking about here.
I mean, when we were talking about this in the planning stage, Derek drew quite a nice diagram where the bigger outer circle is the human factors, and within that sits another area of non-technical skills, which is part of the jigsaw. We did a podcast earlier, and Craig quite nicely talked about the jigsaw pieces, that when you put it all together, you get the bigger picture. And that's where non-technical skills is just a small piece in the bigger picture. But it's important to have that piece, because if it's missing, you don't have the complete picture. Do you know what I mean? So I think the non-technical skills feeds into the bigger picture of human factors and environmental things and things like that. So that's what I would see it as. But putting your finger on non-technical skills, it's tricky to list it, I think.
But it sounds like what we're saying is that non-technical skills are maybe a toolbox that you can use in order to use those in order to get around those human factors, or in order to deal with those human factors in the best way possible. Is that right, or is there more to it?
I'll try and clarify there a bit if I can. The aviation industry, this comes from the aviation industry. We talked about this this morning, didn't we?
We did,
It's super interesting, because the aviation industry in the 80s used their black boxes, and when planes fell out of the sky, things went wrong, they were saying, well, what happened? And so they interrogated the black box, and it was big black box theory. But what they found is it wasn't that when a plane's engine failed, they had to fall out the sky. The reason they had airline disasters was because non-technical skills went wrong. And they scientifically analysed this. And they said, well, what's actually going wrong? Take the Kegworth Air disaster, which we mentioned this morning, when at East Midlands, the right engine was on fire. And because of a failure of communication, situational awareness, they turned the left engine off. So the plane crashed. Yeah, that plane could have easily landed. Just shut the right engine off. You can easily land a 737 on one engine. It is no problem. And they looked at this and said, we've got to stop having these failures. So they put together a non-technical system. And they looked at leadership, task management, situational awareness, decision-making, these domains. And I won't break it down into too much detail, but the aviation industry has been working with these, and as a result, it got safer so much quicker. In the healthcare industry, And bearing in mind, I don't want to draw too much parallel between healthcare and commercial aviation, because healthcare is so much more difficult. You'll have to look at the other podcast on human factors to find out why. So, but we were late in adopting this, 20, 25 years later, but the same things arise. If you've got humans having to react in a time-critical, complex environment, they need good leadership, good planning and prioritization, task allocation, team working, various forms of communication, situational awareness, decision making, all these things. But there's a lot more to it than non-technical skills than that. And I'm sure Natalie, potentially giving a patient's perspective on what you want doctors to be able to, and healthcare staff to be able to deliver in terms of non-technical skills, would add a lot more than that. But that's the essence of the things. And without those skills, the knowledge isn't a problem. You know, you can look up any forms of knowledge, how to manage ischemic heart disease, ACS, life-threatening asthma, etc., hypoglycemia. Yeah, all these things, you can look it up easy. That's not the problem. It's application of knowledge in a teamwork environment. And that's where non-technical skills come in.
And I suppose if we're thinking that VR360 is a good tool to use to teach that, then that brings it home that you're watching things unfold and you're stopping it and you're unpicking, why did that work? Why didn't that work? What might you do differently next time? That the unpicking or people's perception of it, when you stop it and do the discussion, is the bit where the 360 comes into its own, because you've got the video, you stop it, and if you're playing it to various audiences, healthcare audiences, members of the public, everybody's going to be coming at it with different life experience and different views when we stop it. And that's where the powerful learning is. I think it's why it's useful.
Yeah, definitely agree with that.
In teaching non-technical skills.
And I suppose that complexity is somewhat unlimited in that, provided you can create it, provided you can put a 360 camera in an environment and you can get some actors in a scenario to work, then you can make it as complex or as simple as you want, and then you can position it in a way that aligns with what you want to get from your learners. Whereas perhaps the least immersive educational technology is the e-learning that is ubiquitous nowadays, and that doesn't make people feel the feelings when they're learning.
It's very passive as well.
It's very passive.
As immersive.
It comes down to what Anne said, doesn't it? Yeah, it is passive. It isn't immersive at all, is it? It's just watching a screen, whereas with VR360, it's all around you. You've got your headphones on, so the vision and the sounds all around you. And the sounds, because we use ambisonic mics, it's directional. So if something's happening on your right, it's coming from your right, which is absolutely brilliant. And you're right, you can do anything with it. I mean, recently we filmed medical emergencies on board an airliner. So then your off-duty doctor or nurse is attending. And remember, it's not about the technical skills, because on an airliner, you've only got so much to work with. But to get that good outcome for a situation that frankly terrifies healthcare staff, it is all about those non-technical skills. It epitomizes that leadership, task allocation, situational awareness and stuff. If you can do it on board an airliner, you can do it easily in the complex, challenging environment of a hospital.
Yeah, and I just want to draw us back, because I think you've a couple of times mentioned the patient perspective here, and I think it's something that's really important to remember, because, of course, the reason why we do the things we do is to serve the patients in the best way we can. I wonder if we were talking in the planning stages about patient experiences. I wonder if, Natalie, you'd be willing to share what you think, what non-technical skills are most important to patients based on experiences that you've had.
Yeah, of course. So I've been a patient quite a few times now, some with quite serious things going on, and being a patient for about a week in hospital as well, so I've had that inpatient experience. As a patient, the things that I want definitely are clear and strong communication between me and the people looking after me, as well as the staff with themselves as well, to make sure that if somebody's handing over, they've definitely got all of the correct information about me and my case and how I am and that kind of thing. But also, empathy is a massive one. I'm quite a strong communicator anyway as a person, so I appreciate communication when people are looking after me. So empathy towards maybe it's like what's happened to me as a patient. One thing I went in the hospital for was I had a stroke at quite a young age, so I went through a very traumatising experience in the fact that the nurses were very empathetic towards that, and they talked to me in sort of gave me information as well and knowledge about what was actually going on and what was wrong. I know some people prefer to sort of bury their head in the sands or that kind of thing sometimes as a patient, but I'm the complete opposite. I like that information. It gives me comfort. I really appreciated that at the time. So definitely empathy, but also knowing your patient as well, I think super important.
Thank you very much for sharing those experiences with us. And I think it nicely frames things, doesn't it? Because it's so easy to leave the patient out of the conversation and forget that that's what it's all about. Some of those skills that you talked about empathy and communication, I think are skills that everybody may perceive that they have, but I think they're also skills that we can all improve upon, and because adapting to different scenarios is difficult. Given that, as you say, different patients want different things, and given the difficulty in developing these skills, how do we think that virtual reality sim helps us to achieve that? What ways can virtual reality sim, what ways does virtual reality sim here at Bishop Auckland achieve this and help us to think to improve our empathy, to help us improve our communication skills and so on when it comes to dealing with patients?
I think Sam and Colette's psychosis one, that's a very good example of that, because you see the different stages Shannon, the patient who's just had the baby, goes through. And at first the symptoms present very subtle and they gradually sort of increase in severity. But you've also got the perspective of the partner and how it affects them in the community. Midwife is talking to him and hearing and how they are. And I think putting people in hypothetical but realistic situations like that through VR in an immersive sort of learning tool is powerful for that, because they're getting that perspective. They're getting the perspectives of the people who were acting in the VR.
That's fine, but I think like you say, sometimes you need to be embedded in that scenario. Sometimes you need to feel it, don't you, in order to understand that. I think from the educator point of view as well, I think it's worth bearing in mind that whilst traditional simulation is not a particularly scalable tool, only a certain amount of people can be in a sim suite at once. There are challenges in the healthcare system at the moment to train more and more people, and virtual reality sim really only depends on how many headsets you've got available, doesn't it? So everyone can experience those things at the same time. And I think, and I've not done a great deal of debriefing for virtual reality simulation, so I might ask you guys what you think about this. But I think that that when everybody goes through that experience at the same time, then the insights that they can provide and share and talk about are really powerful. And as we were discussing before, I think when people have those conversations and they share thoughts and feelings, often more learning can occur because it comes from a more authentic place, doesn't it? I don't know what you guys think about that. How do you feel that traditional debrief differs? Do you feel to virtual reality debrief, do you feel that it's more impactful in certain ways and than others, or what do you think?
It's not just in terms of comparing with traditional simulation. I think when you look at the VR360, no healthcare topic is off the cards, off the table. If you put a participant in with a puerperal psychosis situation, for example, and you're trying to learn what is a really incredibly challenging, emotive situation, dealing with a poor mother who has postpartum psychosis, and then the husband and all those things going on, you're over your challenge point. Most people are a lot of participants are going to crumple at that point. Taking them back and just observing it like you're in the room, but you're safe. You can really push the limits of the subject matter so that when they meet this tomorrow in an actual situation, they've already experienced with it as bad as it gets. But not only that, they've discussed, well, how would you deal with that? What would you be saying to the husband at this time? What kind of, had you noticed how the midwife was doing with the mother? What was she saying? What were her mannerisms? What did you like? What would you do differently in that situation? You've had that exploration. You've tooled them up to deal with that situation tomorrow in a way that no other healthcare modality could, in terms of those non-technical skills, those behaviours, those mannerisms, the lines of communication. You can't do that in a sim room. It's not, sim rooms are, with the best will in the world, reasonably standardised, even with our immersive backdrops. This is fully in the room. And remember, when you're in a sim room, 80%, 90% of the participants are next door in a debrief room watching. Here, all of them are immersed in that very emotional, evocative situation. So they all get the full experience. And then in terms of comparing to other healthcare modalities, we talked about e-learning, didn't we? E-learning can't touch on it. It's not experiential, and it comes down to what Anne was talking about as well. When you've got 10 people in a group and the video stops, what you've got with a good VR, that one that Natalie's describing is a brilliant VR. The conversation is so rich, it's so powerful. Everyone is so invested in finding solutions. It's just incredible, priceless education that I don't think can be replicated in any other format.
Well, I think, that in itself is really a selling point, isn't it? If you feel that it provides an educational experience that can't be replicated by a different format, I do think that that is pretty much the best endorsement that a simulation technology can get. While we're on the subject of this, I think we've talked about e-learning, and I do think we've sort of touched on the fact that we believe this is a more authentic way of teaching these non-technical skills. Do you think that it seems that simulation has been always quick to embrace new technologies? Do you think that VR and what we're currently doing is the start? Do you think there'll be where do you think VR is going in terms of it teaching non-technical skills? Do you think that there'll be more sharing of resources? Do you think that resources will change? Do you think technologies will adapt to address this in a different way? What do you think, or are we uncertain about what the future holds on this?
I mean, for me personally, I feel like I'm only at the very beginning of learning about VR and how it can be applied in my sort of work environment. But I am a little bit of a technical dinosaur, so I also realise that people in the team are much further down the line with regards to AI. And I mean, it was Craig that introduced me to ChatGPT, and I thought he'd opened my world. I was like, this is an amazing thing.
I haven't forgiven him yet, Anne.
But do you know what I mean? I think for me, I realise I'm at the beginning of my learning, but I think somebody, for example, like Derek, who's got a lot more experience, he probably sees more benefit of it and how it might be applied slightly differently. But for me, I'm quite a novice dinosaur technical person, for want of a better expression.
I think the health system, unfortunately, works in a lot of silos. We've seen that with the introduction of electronic patient records nationally. Everyone picks their own records, so different records don't speak to each other. Pet topic. I'm just quietly ripping my hair out, although I'm obviously only on audio here. It's like, it beggars belief. But yeah, so in terms of sharing of resource, it'd be brilliant. I mean, we like to think, thanks to our sim technical team here at CDFT, we innovate, we're ahead of the curve, we like to think, and I'm blowing the trumpet of the tech team here. They're just fantastic, and they really move on with stuff, take stuff, move it forward. And what we've got is already over 30 VR resources. It would be brilliant if nationally this was distilled into a package with, debrief notes for educational packages with debrief notes for facilitators that could be used nationally, and it was all there. Do things tend to link up like that? Not as well as they should. I mean, all healthcare staff, you take this puerperal psychosis, fantastic bit resource, countless hours gone into scripting, producing, editing. But what you've got in terms of a product, one educator can have 15 people in the room, press play and have a conversation. The end result is so usable. But in terms of distilling it and how do you say, scaling it into its potential, well, not there at all in terms of potential. Sadly, Alistair, gotta be honest.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I think I've seen in the podcast that Craig produces, there's some people talking about the ways of innovating VR with things like AI, and some people talking about using potentially VR for assessment and things like that. But maybe those can be teasers for a future episode. I'm really grateful to everyone for coming together to speak about this today. I don't think we've done too bad for an impromptu podcast here. I hope everybody's enjoyed listening to it. Perhaps
you're listening to the impromptu podcast show.
Perhaps I'll give everyone the chance to say goodbye to the listeners, and hopefully we'll see you to talk more about this topic in the future.
And that's a wrap on this impromptu dive into the world of VR360 in clinical simulation. Hopefully it's given you a bit of insight, or at least something to think about when it comes to how immersive tech is reshaping the way we teach and train. If you've got thoughts, ideas, or maybe even your own VR project that you'd like to share, please get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. You can find the contact details in the episode description. Thank you for listening to the SimTech podcast, and until next time, keep simming, keep thinking creatively, and never stop pushing the boundaries of what's possible in simulation.